The whole cast was excellent.
Terrific.
I really thought so.
Great.
And hope people will see it. That's the.
But I think
Say what I
people
say.
will see it because it's not polemical. It's entertaining. You know?
Right.
I mean,
It is, but it's still touching
But
a subject that.
but it charges your soul. you
Right,
know?
right. It does. It certainly does. I mean, you feel things when you walk out of that theater. You know, it really do. And with this character, Ben, he's a man really caught between the truth.
Are we doing it?
Yeah, yeah. I just
We're
like to
running.
roll right into it. He just.
Yeah. Kind of like a truck coming down.
You don't know. It's like
Here
it's a
we go.
kamikaze attack.
Yeah.
He's like a man. He's caught between the truth in his heart, in his head, and the pressures he's feeling from his family and his country. Really, as far as what he should do. What intrigued you most about this guy? Why do you want to play him?
Oh, they're real interesting people to play. You know, guys who suffer sea changes. Calvin Jarrett in Ordinary People suffered a sea change, but he sat back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when it happened to him, he went like that. And this guy leaps up and jumps forward. This guy walks out of the house. This guy, and it's extraordinary to play. You know, it was inconceivable to me that anybody could be beside Auschwitz in Germany and not know that that genocide was going on.
Mm-hmm.
It was inconceivable to me that a man of 53 years old could sit in Johannesburg and not know, not understand, not be complicit with the racism and the oppression and the brutality. Wouldn't understand it. And then I thought, I have so many friends who come to me and say, my son has been doing drugs for a year and I didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and of course they should know it. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows. You just have to do a little work and know the symptoms, and you know it right away. It isn't that he didn't know it; it's that you don't want to know it.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't want to change. You don't want your ideology, the way you're living, to alter. And Ben, you know, in the press is so censored there. The information
Right.
is so censored. The townships are so far away. He genuinely didn't know. He had a nice relationship with Gordon, his gardener, and Gordon's son, you know, a kind of paternalistic thing. And so when it happens, he doesn't believe it. And then when he's forced to believe it, it's like a Rolodex running backwards, going like that.
Right.
All of his life changes. And it's not possible ever to go back. And he would love to bring everyone with him. It's like Plato's cave, you know. They're all, how does it work? The guys are all bound, and there's a fire behind them, and reality is their shadows on the wall. And then one of them breaks loose, goes outside the cave, sees the sun. The sun, of course, blinds him,
Right.
but it's reality. And he comes running back in and says, hey, wait a second, guys, this isn't real. Outside is real, but he's blind and running around crazy, so they kill him. You know, and that's like it is with Ben. He would have loved everybody to come out of the cave. He would have loved Janet Suzman, who plays my wife, to come out.
Yeah.
But it's not possible.
Yeah.
You know, they don't want to.
I sat in the theater, and this movie struck a lot of emotional chords with me, sitting there watching it. A lot of highs, many lows, you know, the whole gamut of your emotions are touched. How will this film impact on the average moviegoer? It's going to say, oh, Dry White Caesar and Donald Sutherland, Marlon Brando, oh, I've got to see this, you know. They know nothing about it, they walk in there.
They know nothing about it, and they're going to walk in there, and they're going to come out, and not the first day afterwards, but the second day afterwards, they're going to be able to say, I enjoyed it. I had a wonderful time, and they're going to tell everybody to go see it. Because what it does is it does to them what the event did to Ben. It charges your soul. It doesn't change it. Movies never change anything. But it puts you back in touch with yourself. It makes you feel a whole lot of things, from joy and laughter and delight with Marlon to rage at the thing, and you are not offended by polemics, by people trying to shove a political message down your throat. It's a human story about human people, and it puts you back in touch with yourself and what you believe. It makes you as an audience member feel righteous and moral and obligated to do something. It gives you energy. It's terrific. It's a wonderful picture.
Now, on a personal level, what knowledge or understandings did you have about the Soweto uprisings before your involvement in the film?
Well, you know, I mean, I've read books and been informed. I've never been in South Africa, and I don't intend to go to South Africa. And the Afrikaners are not people that I know personally. In Earl's Court in London, when I studied, the people that I was connected with the exception of Janet Suzman, with whom I did study, but she's not an Afrikaner. She's an English South African, which you know, and her mother is Helen Suzman, who's the Liberal Party member. I was with Australians and Canadians, not with South Africans, so I didn't know them. But one is aware of the injustice. One is aware with Amnesty International of the trials and the crimes against race, the crimes against justice. One's aware that you have a nation that, through their great trek, came down there and set up a country, set up a business, so to speak, and then put a fence around it to protect it. But they pushed, you know, all of those people out, and they kept them oppressed. They were not like we were with our Indian people. We came in and we just killed them off, so we didn't have that problem. Right. They have the problem of a living nation, and they have to deal with it. And my fear is that because the Boers are so, the Afrikaners, are so isolated, are not impressed with the Western cultures. They don't care what we think. They don't care what Russia thinks. They're fierce anti-communists and reactionary people, and they have tactical thermonuclear weapons. They'll use them, you know. They'll fight to the death. They're cornered. So it's a terrifying situation for me.
And after your experience with a dry white season, what did you learn that maybe you had not known before?
About South Africa?
Yeah, about the whole situation.
I learned that a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of really terrific positive things, but mostly what I learned was from Zakes Mackay, who was the actor with whom I worked, who is the basic theme through the film, who was the angel, who was just wonderful. I learned it's inconceivable how much suffering, how much persecution, how much loss of his brother, of his father, that man has endured. And to be not optimistic, because he isn't optimistic, but to be so generous of heart as he is, it's wonderful. It's for me, I revere him, you know.
He's a fine actor, by the way.
Oh, he's a terrific actor. He's a terrific man. You know, he's just great.
Aside from movie making, your profession, what do you think can be done to shed more light on the current climate of unrest in South Africa? I mean, this, you know, people do see movies, and it'll make an impact and when they leave the theater, but just on a political end, what do you think?
Well, I would have to say sanctions, you know. I think that, you know, once you have sanctions, then you have real problems. But Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher wouldn't do that, you know. And the big companies like, you know, the IBMs, the whatever, and I can't say specifically, I shouldn't really say IBM, because there are companies, I've forgotten the names of them, because I've tried to get myself out of all of the political dogma of the situation and into the characters, so I pull all the way. But there's certainly major American companies that have big investments and participate in the ongoingness of life there that should pull out, you know. Some have, but a lot of them haven't. Because underneath it all is profit. And if you take away the profit, change happens. You know, you can, there was an incident today where 20,000 people marched in Cape Town, and they lifted 8 different restrictions to allow them to do it, so that it was a legal march. there are people like Ben Dutoit who change, you know. But they have to do it pretty quickly because there's not a lot of time left.
Mm.
But, you know, for people who go to see the film, South Africa is one problem. But, you know, we're just messing up everything. I look at the paper and the Exxon Valdez is over and Exxon's profits are up by 8.5% this quarter, you know. We can't, 1/3 of our coastline, you cannot eat the fish out of it. It's a mess.
Yeah, we have problems all over the,
We got a lot
the
to do,
globe
you know.
here.
But the film is like a catalyst that makes you feel good about doing something about it, you know.
Now, on a personal level, you have played the past 2 films, 2 real different ends of the spectrum, the acting spectrum, with Lock Up and Dry White Season. How important is versatility to you?
It doesn't exist for me. I don't even think about it. With the exception of sometimes just to live, I think about, I don't think about it personally, but Ronnie Meyer, who is my representative and who is the man who basically tells me objectively what to do in my life, says, okay, you should do this film with Sylvester because you have done Bethune, which is who knows what. You have done Lost Angels, that was esoteric and not successful. You've done A Dry White Season, and even though MGM is behind it, and Richard Berger, who has taken over for Alan Ladd, has done an absolutely sensational job of supporting the picture. It's hard. It's so good. Who knows? You know, maybe people just want candy floss, but. So he said, do this picture in the middle of the road. I think what's going to happen is that Sylvester's picture ended up having a very limited audience, and this picture is going to, everybody will go see it.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And you have, with A Dry White Season, the unique distinction of being in perhaps one of the last Marlon Brando movies and working with him in a scene, because he recently came out in the paper saying he's given it up. Well, he does it every other week, but I mean, you know, you never know. I mean, we are all fans in this business. What was it like working on a set with this guy? I mean, you had one particular scene in an office that you had to deal with him. I've heard many stories. I've heard that he has the lines on your chest, or he won't memorize anymore.
But sometimes, no, there's not a question of not memorizing. You mustn't confuse that. That's real interesting, because that has, you know, the actor's process is to memorize his lines, then try and forget them and hope that the line that cues the line that he's memorized will be said in such a way that it will cause a reaction, that line will burst up into your imagination and you'll say it and it'll look real. What Marlon does with, what he used to do with the cards and what he does now with other devices is to try and avoid that. In other words, he, you know, for example, in scenes like the courtroom scene, he knows everything. When he quotes something to you, he can word passage page. But for him to have that on the wall, it's just it's like that on his head. In other words, it's the instinct, and it's hard to describe to someone who doesn't know it, but I didn't understand it until I worked with him. And I envied it so much, the idea of it, because what it did was make everything much more real and much more immediate and much more surprising. To work with him, I have a terrible crush on him. So it's, he's a genius. He's a genius as a performer, and he's a genius as a human being. And to be in his presence is to be in the presence of someone whose sensibility is filled with such a wealth of resource, of literary and observed experience. And he is able to pull from it little pieces. He's extraordinary. He's beyond comparison. I don't know anyone who even approaches him. He is, if you know the poems of John Keats, he's like a Keats poem. There's a a piece of Alexander Pope which says, true wit is nature, to advantage dressed, what oft was thought, but ne'er so well expressed. And that's Brando. He does it perfectly. He's definitive. He's constantly giving you little epiphanies. I love him. You know, and he's so bright. Me, I love the acting profession, and he has the kind of affection for me that I know that he would not insult a profession I love by condemning it, because it isn't a bad profession. It's a terrific one, but sometimes all the paraphernalia around it must be very fatiguing for him. And he came back, and we had a wonderful time working. It was non-stop, and he was totally generous and loving and objective, and it was like a permanent caress. It was wonderful, and he had an experience in Canada, but that had to do with production and studio, you know, the problem.
Right,
and then he blew up about it, and then he retracted it all. And you know, gosh, I hope he makes a movie again.
Could you be a friend with Marlon Brando? I mean, if you were to see him socially, could that be possible?
But he phones me, we talk on the phone. I don't know, I mean, that to me is seeing somebody socially.
Right.
Going out to eat, you know, could I sit with him? I'd love to sit with him. If he would come to my, you know, sure.
You love your business. I mean, you know, it's obvious speaking with you. You love this career that you've chosen for yourself, and work is important. I was reading some articles about you, and you've starred in some great films. I mean, some classic movies, and you've starred in some stinkers, you know, mediocre ones. And you would, I mean, I read the stuff, and you said, yeah, well, sometimes choices were not there, what have you. You know, you went for a director one time when the script might have been not that good. How do you personally measure success?
Well, there are a whole lot of ways. But I guess the real way for me to measure success is when people on the street react to me, and they react to me mostly and I love it. I get such deep pleasure from it. They used to call me Donald, and now they call me Mr. Sutherland.
It's a great name.
But it's like I either lived in the town they lived in when they were kids, or else I'm, you know, it's very, very friendly. It's a little bit like I'm an eccentric in the town, but I mean, I'm a piece of the furniture, and it's wonderful, you know. And they're always very, very respectful. They always have some good memory from some things that I've done, and it's wonderful, you know.
Yeah, we all share that. I mean, being a fan of movies.
Yeah.
You've made, how many have you made now? Almost 50. Pretty
No,
close to
62.
it. 60, okay. And years ago, I was reading that you said at that time, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years ago, you were not ready for success in your life. Has that changed?
I would sure like a little bit more money.
Is that, you don't always equate success with money?
No, I don't. No, that's obvious from just what I said.
Right.
I don't really equate it, you know, with money at all. I know people who are hugely successful who have no money. Yeah.
Look at me. I mean, I have no money and I'm in a bum, so it's I really have to struggle on the way up. Do moviegoers know the real Donald Sutherland?
There are a couple out there. I was married to 2 of them. Everybody else, I don't know. I mean, the real one is not much more than what you get. I mean, he's just sitting here. I love to eat, and I have a terrific time with my kids, and I have the immense good fortune to be an actor who is on the waning end of his career. I mean, actors' lives go on forever. They can continue, but I have the joy of having a son who's just terrific, and who's not only consummately good, but he's real smart, and to watch him and to talk to him, and he's a young man who comes home. You know, he said, "I'm on my way home, Dad," and he flew. You know, his wife and the two children went back to Los Angeles to get ready for school, and he flew to Montreal and drove out, and we went fishing. You know, and he was great. You know, to his younger brothers, and
Right.
you know.
Did you take in any Expos games? Do you do that anymore? Or,
There weren't any Expos games in town.
Okay.
Otherwise, but it would have been. I don't know whether it would have been. It's not. You know, people really mob him, so it's
Yeah.
not so
I mean, imagine
easy
the
for
two of you
him.
together. It must be rough. It must be
Yeah.
rough getting out there.
But Expos game.
Forget it.
Oh dear.